You're listening to Let Me Tell You Why You're Wrong, all on Georgia Radio Network.
Welcome to episode 121 of the Let Me Tell You Why You're Wrong podcast. I'm Dave Roberts. With me, as always, is writer, journalist, blogger, and all-around blonde superwoman, Jessica Szilagyi.
Whoop, whoop. Superwoman?
Yep. Flying around curing injustices in local governments all over South Georgia.
Curing. Yeah,
Exposing, anyway.
My recommended cure is get rid of them.
It's bad to say she flies around exposing.
Woo! Not that kind of podcast.
How was your week?
It was good. You know, we're going to talk about it on the show, but I've been just getting ready for the legislature to go back in session, and it kind of has me all concerned. I haven't had any structure or any type of accountability or time constraints in 3 months. So it'll be interesting. What about you?
I dislocated my knee again on Saturday. So I spent the week limping.
Oh, no.
It'll be fine. It happens. Essentially, this orthopedic surgeon's like, it happens once a year. You're still a pretty young guy. I don't want to put a new knee in. So when it happens, wear a brace, ice it down, and live with it. Like, thanks.
It's hard getting old.
It is. Yeah, this knee's been chronic for 20 years. But anyway,
20 years. Wow, that's more than half my life.
Yes, it is. It's 66% of your life. Speaking of pain, the dumbasses are returning to the circus tent, and they'll have 11 legislative days to get work done. By constitutional standards, they must approve a budget by July 1.
That's a professional opinion, by the way.
That's a professional opinion?
Yeah. Not that of all on Georgia, just ours, but that is my professional opinion.
Oh, the dumbasses?
Mm-hmm.
Not the constitutional standards, not opinion. That's fact.
Well, it depends on who you ask, I guess, but
yeah, that'll obviously be priority one. 11 days doesn't mean 11 calendar days, of course, so they could stretch that 11 days as long as they want, but they're going to start itching to get the hell out of there. I mean, it's going to be July very soon, and they want to go on vacation before kids go back to school and move on with their lives. Well,
and we were talking about it before the show, they have to have the budget approved by July 1, but that also means, and then of course, Kemp's budget people and the legislative budget people will be keeping an eye on everything, but he has to have time to go through it and check it and veto do any line item vetoes or anything like that. And you mentioned that 11 legislative days is not 11 calendar days, but when you look at the calendar, the 15th pretty much leaves 12 business days between now, or the 15th and July 1. So unless I don't foresee, they could meet on the weekends, but I don't foresee that happening. So I think it's going to be kind of pedal to the metal on everything, which for the budget, they've been talking about that. Then they had their budget hearings a couple weeks ago. They had 2 weeks worth of budget hearings based on the proposed cuts, and hearing from agency heads and all of that. But which the part we're going to talk about now is the initiatives, the bills that have been, exchanged from crossover that are sitting idle, plus all of the new ones that they plan to drop and put in vehicle bills, which is when they gut a bill that made it through by crossover and replace it with new language, which is not ethical, but they do it all the time. Like, all those things are going to have to be watched as well, while they have, like I said, 12 business days and 11 legislative days. So,
well, some of the initiatives that they're pushing: repeal of citizen's arrest,
which has been all over the news. You have an opinion on that one, Dave?
Yeah, that's stupid.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when we consider that our police are citizens.
Yes, that's a very good point. The law does not distinguish between citizens and police.
And the Arbery case down there, they already broke the law. They already were outside the citizen's arrest statute. So repealing it wouldn't have saved his life.
No, and it's a defense. They're using that as a defense. They even said, I mean, there was nothing in their own statements or in that, like, oh, we're hopping in the car to go arrest this guy. That was not, I don't know what they were thinking. I'm not going to speculate, but I don't think that it wasn't like on the way there, they're thinking the statute in the back of their mind. I just don't see that.
They want to repeal stand your ground.
I think that's worse than repealing the citizen's arrest.
Oh, absolutely it is.
But
saying that I don't have a duty to retreat. And it was just recently passed. They're using the Arbery case to pass this. That was not a case of stand your ground.
They chased him.
Right, that's not standing your ground. That's hopping in a pickup truck and running somebody down. It's two pieces of white trash. That's running around with a shotgun and a pistol trying to run somebody down because you feel that you may have been wronged by this guy, or that somebody else was wronged by this guy, and being self-important. Screw those guys. That's a horrible idea to repeal stand your ground. And here we go, and this is the blue ribbon here: passage of hate crimes legislation.
Well, this has come up every year for the last few years. I think in 2017, they did the vehicle bill thing where they kept gutting it and putting it in other legislation. And Wendell Willard and I think Megan Hansen were behind that. Neither one of them are there anymore. And then last year, it passed out of the House with heavy Republican opposition. It barely passed. I want to say like in the low 90s. I probably should have looked that up before, but I didn't. But it only had a couple votes to spare. And it's been sitting, because our sessions are 2 years, it's been sitting in the Senate waiting to be assigned a committee. And last year, or in 2019, they weren't going to give it consideration. And through the legislative session until they adjourned, they were not going to give it any consideration in the Senate. But here we are in this political environment, and it's time. Our state has to have hate crime legislation now, so they're going to consider it. And I think it's really interesting. I mean, it doesn't surprise me that the Georgia Association of Chiefs of Police is backing it, just simply because they have no. It doesn't impact them one way or the other, and that's a low-hanging fruit to try to get some positive publicity. But there's two other groups that endorsed the legislation, and I think that's interesting. You want to talk about that? Yeah,
the Georgia Chamber of Commerce and the Metro Atlanta Chamber of Commerce has endorsed it. Really, they need to get back in their box. It doesn't have anything to do with business. But chambers are private organizations that survive off membership dues. So this has to be like every other business that's out there, virtue signaling right here. Is to hop on with it, because I don't think they want the Metro Atlanta Chamber being split into and have a separate minority chamber.
Well, and it's frustrating because they are, especially the Georgia Chamber, I mean, they're a very powerful lobbying arm in the legislature. They do scorecards. They have plenty of money. And if there's any sort of, what I worry about more is their support of this and raising awareness to this is delivering another initiative for them. And that could be any number of things that's still on the table or things that are coming down the pipeline in exchange for their support here.
And it's a sentence enhancer, and right. It's going to be used the same way they got Michael Flynn to plead guilty. Is, hey, listen, if you plead guilty, you're going to get 10 years. If you don't, we're going to hit you with the hate crimes on top of assault with a deadly weapon, and you're going to get 20. And it's used as a tool from prosecutors to avoid having to give somebody a fair trial.
Well, and it's similar. I say similar. I use the word lightly. It's similar to the death penalty from the standpoint that you decide in the beginning if you're going to be pursuing hate crime legislation or enhancers on the charge. You don't wait till they're convicted and then be like, oh, by the way, we'd like to tack on some extra time. That's not how it works. The prosecutor would have to decide in the beginning that they're going to pursue it as a hate crime, and for those reasons, and in the Arbery case, if you watched the preliminary hearing, which was several hours long, I think 2 weeks ago now, there were some racial words used or testimony to the effect that there were racial words used after the McMichaels chased down Arbery. But does that make it worse? I mean, there are a lot of people who say it does, but under the law, is it worse because someone hated him for his skin color?
It's impossible to know somebody's mind.
Sure.
Did they do it because he was black? We talked about it when we had the two attorneys on. Is would the reaction have been the same if it was a sketched out white dude? And I don't know. And that's the problem with hate crimes legislation. Is I don't know. I don't know if the same thing had happened with a meth head. And after, instead of dropping the N-bomb on the dude, he says, and he stands over him and says, tweaker trash, whatever. I mean, it's those two are absolutely deserve prison. And again, these are our opinions and not necessarily those of all in Georgia, and they have not been convicted of anything. But in my personal opinion, they're trash. They're garbage human beings. And they have no place in a civilized society. I'll tell you how I really feel, right?
Right, and I understand what you're saying, and to the point though about do they do it because he was black, or is it worse because he's black or was black? Whatever the justification is, I mean, even somebody who will admit that they are a racist or that they hate all black people, or all people of whatever type of, all gays, or whatever the identifier is under the law. I mean, this is going to sound terrible, but is their opinion of a group of people, does that make the actual act worse?
Well, here's the other thing: is there are things called fighting words, and it is there to elicit a response. And it's said in the heat of the moment. Doesn't necessarily mean that's the way the person operates, but you're trying to goad somebody into a fight. It's fighting words. So if you may drop language that you normally wouldn't in conversation. I mean, it's fighting words. It's using it like a verbal punch. It doesn't change the crime. In our society, we punish actions, not thoughts. The difference between conspiracy and a thought is a conspiracy is you've taken action towards making something happen. So we don't prosecute you for fantasizing about robbing a bank. We prosecute you for attempting to rob a bank.
Right.
So, what are the lawmakers saying?
Well, this is entertaining to me because there's been, just like everywhere else we've seen, there's been this desire, I think, by elected officials to say something, even if that something is wrong or meaningless or whatever. But State Rep Lee Hawkins, State Rep Emory Dunhu, and Senator Butch Miller are all in the same area, the Gainesville area-ish. And I'll give Butch Miller, the senator, some leeway because they haven't voted on it yet. But Lee Hawkins said he thinks it's reasonable, and Emory Donoghue said he wants to see what's in it before he makes a decision. But they voted on it already. Like they already voted on the bill. So that kind of disappoints me. And it disappoints me even more that their local newspaper didn't know that and didn't even put it in the article that they voted on it. But I guess those things don't matter. Facts don't matter.
I do like what State Rep Sherry Gillian said, or Jillian.
Gilligan's
We
right.
are Gilligan. Yeah. Yeah. We're lucky that in Georgia, all crime victims are equal before the eyes of the law, regardless of their skin color or the skin color of their assailant.
As you can tell, she voted against it.
And
When it came up before.
And she's standing up for principle. We're equal in the eyes of the law. We are all due equal protection, regardless of our race, creed, color, sexual orientation. We're all viewed equally. Justice is supposed to have the blindfold on. And when you do hate crime legislation, justice is kind of peeking under it to see what you look like.
Well, and one other thing I think worth mentioning, we are talking about a very egregious case that we all saw happen on video, but not every hate crime results in death. I mean, there's other things like that, and I'm concerned that it will be abused. And I mean, we see prosecutors abuse sentence enhancers all the time. I just don't want everyone being sentenced more strictly simply because they had different identifiers. I mean, there's
Right.
no threshold to demonstrate intent or anything like that.
Tell me what it prevents.
Well, I mean, if you're making the argument that laws don't prevent crime, they only punish, or they're supposed to. I mean, the death penalty doesn't deter crime. That's statistically proven. I don't know. I mean, but the answer is it doesn't. It doesn't
Right.
prevent anything. And
Well, let's see.
it's popular right now, is what it is.
Rep. Calvin Smyer. It's unfortunate that in times like these, that these types of incidents causes us to act. To me, that's an abdication of our responsibility as state legislators. I can't talk this morning. Yeah. It's unfortunate that it makes us act. No, you don't have to act. Killing Arbery was already illegal. Chasing him down was already illegal. Trying to detain him in violation of the citizen's arrest was already illegal. Adding a sentence enhancer doesn't make it any more illegal. It's like super illegal because he's black.
Right. And the language actually says actual or perceived race, color, religion, national origin, sexual orientation, gender, mental disability, or physical disability. Real or perceived. So it could be, it goes in both directions. Was it committed because there was a belief that there was a difference in race and all those things? Or was it perceived to be committed because, I mean, it's not even clear.
Right. I think what they mean is, if I'm going down the road and I see a guy dressed a little too nice, and I decide that I'm going to beat him up, and I beat him up, and I use gay slurs, and it turns out he's got a wife and kids. It was my perception that he was gay that caused me to attack him.
Well, and I did just want to say, I did pull up the bill, and it passed 96 to 64. And we mentioned Lee Hawkins, who is a terrible state representative, by the way. I mean, he has, like, I don't know if he even has a single principle in his body, but he said that he thought the bill was reasonable and the idea and all that. He voted against it in 2019, so.
Virtue signaling.
Yeah.
Representative Al Williams and Senator Lester Jackson have called to rename HB 426, the Ahmaud Arbery hate crime bill.
Pandering.
Huh?
Pandering.
Yep, absolutely. Speaker Ralston has pledged his support for the bill once again, though he did not comment on continued ethical misdoings as an attorney who uses the court system and his legislative privilege to delay cases. You can tell who wrote that one. But yeah, look, hate crimes legislation does nothing but help the lawyers.
Why do you say that?
Well, anytime you add a crime, it helps defense attorneys, helps them bill more hours.
Oh, see, I was thinking of it from it helps the prosecutors because they can, when they have to run for re-election, they can point to statistics and say, we prosecuted, Well,
of course it does, but the defense attorney is billing by the hour. Mm-hmm. So it's a game. I'm not saying that they don't want to win. Of course they want to win, and they want to be able to go to future clients and say, "Look what I did." But at the end of the day, if they lose, or if they get a client to plead out, that attorney goes home to his wife and kids and counts his money.
That's right.
Vernon Jones. Oh. Vernon wants to add political leanings to the list of protected victims.
Well, and we talked about this because they're reporting this as if it's new, but he presented this. Do you remember?
No.
Well, we talked about it on the show.
I don't remember what I did yesterday.
All right. Well, he towards the end of the legislative session, when he was getting hammered for backing Trump, or not towards the end of the legislative session, and before they adjourned, when he was getting hammered for backing Trump and abandoning his political party and all that garbage, he put out a bill for the same thing, where he wanted to go protect people for their views, and now he wants to amend it to be even worse.
Yeah, here's his quote. Americans are being attacked nationwide because of their party affiliation and political ideology. I have personally been subjected to hate speech and threats because of my support for President Trump's reelection. While we are discussing hate crimes legislation in Georgia, we should address another form of hate crime that people are experiencing. Here's the problem. If two guys are having a heated political discussion that goes to a fisticuffs, now it's a hate crime.
And so the bill, again, he's just capitalizing on what's going on to bring this back up. It was dropped he filed it on March 5th because I wrote about it. But the language is, again, actual or perceived political beliefs or political associations. And then instead of just being your traditional misdemeanor, it requires at least a 3-month minimum in jail, no more than 12 months, and then up to $5,000 in fines and penalties, as opposed to the max of $1,000 for regular misdemeanors. And then when it comes to high and aggravated misdemeanors, he wants 6 months in jail minimum. It's just
asinine. And he loves playing victim. Yeah. And he's loving the limelight. He's going to get the most out of this last 11 legislative days. He wants to be on TV. It's got to be. His ultimate goal has got to be landing a job on Fox as a talking head, something like that. I mean, that's got to be his goal. And the award for response deemed most politically safe but devoid of principle goes to,
drum roll, Lieutenant Governor Jeff Duncan. So he put this statement out on his Twitter account about how, while everyone's having the conversation about hate crimes, and on May 29th, he said that it's an important piece of legislation and it's important to get it right. It is time to make it clear that Georgians will not stand for hate or violence. As we work through this legislation, we want to make sure all victims of hate crimes have certain tools at their disposal. Victims of bias-motivated violence should have recourse in civil court. I want to ensure that victims have a remedy for the rights they hold as Georgians. And in our communities, state and local law enforcement officials need to have the proper training at their disposal in order to correctly identify, investigate, and prosecute hate crimes. As we work through the legislation with the Senate Judiciary Committee, these are some of the specific details we will look to address. What? Okay. What is your position? Your position is you want them to be able to sue in civil court. Pretty sure you can already do that. You want law enforcement to be trained on how to identify these things. I mean, in the Arbery case, they called him the N-word, and they identified that in the police report and in the GBI investigation. Like, I don't really understand what he's trying to accomplish here. It's stupid. It's a really stupid statement.
Of course it is. He is politically milquetoast. He wants to come down on both sides of the issue, and you either are principled or you're not. You either stand up and say, "Look, what's happened has been a horrible case, but it would have been just as horrible if it happened to anybody else. If it was a Mexican dude running down the street, if it was a white dude running down the street, if it was an old Chinese woman running down the street, it is wrong to pull up and blow somebody away. It's already illegal. Have some principle, man."
Well, yeah, the statement that we're ready to make it clear that Jordans will not stand for hate and violence. Oh, okay. Are we currently operating under a system that condones hate and violence?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and it's accusatory that the only thing that's going to hold me back from killing somebody is the legislature. I thought it was perfectly okay to roll down the street and just hop out of my truck and beat the snot out of somebody. That was cool.
No one said it wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, but hey, apparently it's not. Apparently, we need to be told from the legislature not to hate. I'm like, oh, well, that's where I went wrong. I wouldn't be surprised that if they didn't put themselves in there, if you beat the snot out of them for being a crappy legislator, that's a hate crime too. All right, so cut, trim, slice, slash, chop, shear, cull, shave, prune, pluck. A bunch of cuts in the pipeline. Initially, it was 14%, what they were calling for across the board, a bloody amputation, not a surgical slice. But Kemp has since said that revenues are bouncing back and 11% will be sufficient.
Yeah, I think that it was always going to be that 11% was sufficient, but it sounds better to say 14 and make everybody panic and be like, oh my God, we won't even be able to have lights in our office. And then they're like, actually 11%. Okay, that's not so bad because they'll be able to add a few things back. That's my own. I mean, I feel like they always ask for more so that it doesn't seem so bad. I've seen local governments do it where they say, oh, we're going to raise taxes 2 mils, and then they advertise for it, everyone's outraged, and then right before the vote, they're like, you know what, we've heard your concerns, we're only going to raise it 1 mil. It's the same thing.
Car salesmen do it.
Yeah.
They come in and go, okay, well, it's going to be 50,000. You're like, let me go talk to the sales manager. They come back in and say, look, I told them I really like you guys, and if we can do 45. Well, 45 sounds reasonable. Oh, God. Because I really want you to have this car.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, wow, that's not so bad. I mean, it happens all the time as a sales technique. So I don't think it's as you put on their black helicopter. You can take off your tin foil fedora. I
will do no such thing. And it's a crown, thank you.
It's a foil crown.
Yes.
Some of the proposed cuts. 1.3 billion would be cut from the state's formula that aids its 1.8 million K through 12 students, more than $700 per student.
Yeah, so this one obviously is the one that has the teachers outraged because teachers get outraged about everything, but they are taking it as a personal attack. And the state formula for funding is very interesting. And we have this thing called equalization money. I'm not sure if you are familiar with it because you come from a big district up there, but and Bullock doesn't even, I don't even think they get very much, if they get any at all. But a lot of the poor counties or rural counties, because their tax bases are small, and because education in the state of Georgia is a constitutional thing, thanks to our fearless leaders, they send money from different areas to other areas. So, I'm not going to speak to specific counties because I can't remember the exact numbers and I don't want to speak incorrectly, but I know many rural counties get well over $1 million every year from the state for operations. Well, the more money you get, because we're working on percentages, the harder you're going to be hit. And that's the case that a lot of the districts are making, which is funny, because it's based on percentages. So everyone's just looking for the best way to play the victim right now. But
I'm tired of hearing the teachers gripe and moan. Look, you knew what you were getting into when you got a degree in education. You knew no one came to you and said, "Hey, when you start teaching fifth grade, that's when the big bucks roll in." You do it because you love it. Now, look, there are legitimate reasons for teachers to be pissed. In fact, my sister-in-law is taking a break from teaching. She's done with it. It's not a money thing. It is an administrative thing. It's, she's not able to teach. She just wanted to teach kids, and you can't just teach anymore. And that is a total legitimate reason to be angry at the government. Mm-hmm. For getting between a teacher and a student, for interfering in the maturation of young minds.
Well, hold on, but in that same line, the teachers are the same ones who were angry at any even conversation about sending kids back to school this year, or when we're going to reopen, how we're going to reopen, how we're going to, what are we supposed to do around the sick kids and this, that, and the other. Well, you guys got your paycheck steadily through all of this. Everyone else didn't, and now you're having this is a consequence of keeping the schools closed and having your income uninterrupted.
Right. Look, yeah, most everybody, especially in the private sector, took a hit. Whether you lost your job, whether you had your hours cut. Everybody from airline pilots, lawyers took a hit, doctors took a hit. If you were just a family practitioner, I mean, you took a big hit. What about the nurse that takes your temperature before the doctor walks in? She took a hit. I know it's sexist, or he took a hit. Everybody did, and we're talking everybody from millionaires down to $10 an hour employees took a hit. Mm-hmm. And your check kept rolling in. And
this is a consequence of closing things down. I mean, I made the argument early on that, when things quote, started opening up a little bit, or people were allowed to return to work. I mean, if your kids are home, I understand that school's not supposed to be daycare, but if your kids are home and the schools are closed, we're not reopened, because there are plenty of families who don't know what to do or have to make crazy accommodations because their kids aren't gone 5 days a week. So,
I think we'll see a private solution to that, whether it's a stay-at-home mom that may make extra money, where kids can take laptops and go stay at that house and do their schoolwork on the days that they're off, or the Boys and Girls Club will provide computers for kids to do distance learning. I think we'll start to see that. Sure,
but that wasn't an option when everything hit the fan.
Oh, no. When the crap hit the fan, yeah, no, it was. But we will see as this ramps up. The sooner we get guidance on what's going to happen, the sooner the private market and the charitable market can respond to that. But right now, we have no idea what's going to happen.
Right. So anyway, education's lots of local school districts are holding off on their budgets because they don't know what's going to happen. Obviously, the bigger ones, like I said, that don't have to rely on state funding as much or to the same degree aren't necessarily, they can just make budget amendments and things like that. But some of the rural districts they're in a real pickle.
Well, even the larger school districts are not just state funds, but there's SPLOST money, or their eSPLOST money fell off. Mm-hmm. I think we're going to see a correction in property values, which means their collections will go down. And it's a really bad time to raise millage rates on homeowners. When you're looking at 13% unemployment, even though that was supposed to be a good number we got a couple weeks ago, it's still, a huge number. So it's time to everybody's time to put their adult pants on, and sit down and go, what don't we need? Where can we save money?
Well, and that's what everyone else has done.
Right.
And the state agencies are, they're having to plan for the worst.
Yeah.
The $3.5 billion was the 14%, so it's just, a little bit less than that of the $28 billion, which I love when they say that we have a $28 billion budget, because the budget is like $52 million because we have federal funds and federal mandated programs. It's just not state dollars that pay for those things. But the actual operate all of the things that are operated by state agencies is like $52 billion. So just wanted to throw that in there.
They're proposing 2 unpaid furlough days a month, counting to pay cut close to 10% for state employees. That's a big number. I mean, yeah. 10% is a big number. I get it. But you're also not enlisted with the state. We have a really, really good inspector out here who just turned in his notice. He was involved. People may know Jimmy Wages from from Sydney's fight. His daughter is severely disabled. He spearheaded the medical cannabis. Really, really, really good guy. But he left working for the county. He can go work for a private engineering firm, and that's what's good for him, good for his family. And if you don't want to, if you don't want to take a 10% pay cut, it's time to start putting your resume out there.
Right.
I mean, sorry, but that's what. When I was working for Wachovia Bank and we got bought and the raise I was promised got frozen, I said, "Look, you're telling me to find another job," and my boss was like, "Yeah, I understand. I have no control." So I mean, you take your skills to market. Departments of Health would send $17.7 million less to county health departments.
That's going to take a hit that's going to have an impact just because that's,
Yeah, that's going to have an impact. Yeah, that's where the least among us go to get health care.
Well, and yeah, all different kinds of things. And they already, arguably, the county health departments, a lot of them are already understaffed and they're a mess. They're the ones that do the restaurant inspections and pools and all that. And they are already usually have one employee or one full-time trained person. That'll hit hard.
Department of Corrections would close 6 facilities.
Oh, and I just want to clarify that we are still talking about, because the Kemp told everybody in the beginning of May that they had until May 20th to submit their proposals for 14%. So what we're talking about is 14% budget cuts, because that's what they had to give to everyone, and that's what was discussed in the committee hearings, in the budget hearings. So we don't know what all of this will look like as they roll back, but at the same time, on some of these things, you could argue, well, if you could do without them at 14, you could do without them. Not all of it, but some of it. So I just want to make that clear, that this is on 14% numbers, because that's all we have right now. We don't know what they would exchange back, I guess is what I'm saying.
And of course, closing corrections facilities, I don't know. I guess are they closing the public run? Are they closing the private prisons?
Well, they can't close the private prisons because none of the private prisons are on the chopping block. But they're all facilities, and one of them on the chopping block has pretty much been said to close, is the Women's Detention Center in Claxton, which is a real shame because it's a transitional center. So those women work and do, part-time stuff. It's just interesting that we're not really harping on, well, who can we release, the low-level offenders of people who are going to get out in the next bit of time? Who can we release and consolidate here?
Right.
We would never do that.
Ooh.
How can we be tough on crime?
The Department of Behavioral Health and Development Disability would eliminate 367 positions and close 1,676 beds for independent living and inpatient services. $172 million.
That's a lot of money for 1,600 beds and 367 positions. But they are also, I think, I don't know who it's through, but there's also going to be a cut to insurance programs and services for disabled children across the state that get supplemented through like Medicaid and those types of programs. So, I mean, that department is going to take a lofty beating.
Abandoned maintaining closed mental hospitals in Rome and Thomasville.
So we're going to have state property that we don't keep up and will be worth nothing by the time we actually want to get rid of. I mean, put it on the market, sell it. What are we doing here?
Right. That's kind of where I was on it. I mean, if you sell it, you stop maintaining it too. You know what? Government would find a way to continue maintaining it after it's sold.
Yeah, for sure. It'd probably be in the contract.
Department of Labor asked to be exempt from the 14, so did the Public Defenders Council. I
support the Public Defenders Council not being... Okay, let's pump the brakes here. Public Defenders Council is... those people are a constitutionally mandated... Like, from not just the state because we amended the Constitution, but you have a right to an attorney. If you cannot afford one will be appointed to you. Like, they already operate on a bare bones budget. I don't know if the legislature is going to do it, but they should. I mean, they shouldn't be subject to it. They're one of the most underfunded agencies in the state. The Department of Labor, their argument is, well, look at all the unemployment claims we're processing. We're working so hard. We're working around the clock. And I guess Mark Butler's argument also was that over the years, since he took office, I think in 2011, I think. I'm not sure. But since he's been there, they've already slashed their budget considerably because the office wasn't even using, like, computers for most things. And they've transitioned to a lot of more efficient and technologically advanced programs and operations. And so his argument is, like, while everyone else's budget has gone up, mine has gone down over the last few years. I don't think I should be subject to cuts. That is, to me, a more legitimate argument than unemployment claims because that's your job.
I was about to say, yeah, that's a valid argument. I've been doing it. We'll continue to do it.
Yeah.
Law enforcement, GBI and Georgia State Patrol could see up to 24 furlough days.
You can hate the police all you want, but if you don't think that's going to have an effect on a whole bunch of stuff, you're really wrong.
The GBI will freeze vacant scientist and lab technician positions at the state crime lab.
That's garbage because they just built a multi-million-dollar complex down here in Pooler, right outside of Savannah. Built this massive crime lab, and they already had to fight to get staffers in it in the most recent year budget. So you're going to have an empty building or a building that is, half operational. And we pass all these laws like about rape testing kits and we have backlogs and all that. So you want to cut that?
Right. 28 GBI positions to be left unfilled.
That's more along the lines of the actual agents, not necessarily the scientist. It's separate from the scientist. So that I don't really, that sucks, but whatever.
Public safety would delay a new trooper class a year and freeze vacant positions. That is my preferred way of cutting salary. Is not replace natural attrition or delay the replacement of natural attrition. That's what a private entity would do if they had to trim labor costs. Is before layoffs and furloughs and cutting hours, is say, okay, well, we've got all these open positions. Let's hire a little slower. Let's see what we can do without. The quote here is, obviously, public safety is one of the more important duties that the government provides for the safety and security of its citizens, Senator Tyler Harper said in a committee hearing and vowed to work to limit furlough days for law enforcement.
I bet he ticked off like everyone that wasn't in law enforcement by saying that.
Right. And again, you don't go into law enforcement because you think you're going to make that sweet deputy money. That sweet GSP money. You do it because that's what you want to do. So, and everybody else has been scathed by this, and law enforcement is going to have to take a hit. It's just going to have to. What worries me is disgruntled GSP officers out there, troopers out there. Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, $4.3 million from accountability courts.
This one is super concerning because accountability courts, we've talked about how they give special treatment to veterans and things like that. It's not necessarily that and that angle. It's that it's in the mental health courts, the drug courts, the veterans courts, and even in parental courts, they give an alternative to jail time. It's like pretrial diversion or certain plans where if you stick to it, you get counseling, you do community service, you stay on the straight and narrow, you don't end up in jail. Or if you do, you can still, I guess, like maybe first offender type stuff. But what this would mean, this is troubling in the sense of they would get rid of it, and it would mean that 2,000 people who currently live and work outside of confinement would be back in prison. So to save money, we're going to pay for them to live in prison. Yeah,
I would like to see the math on that.
Well, but they're not under the Department of Corrections, so they don't care. They're trying to cut their budget. They don't care what happens to DOC.
Which, in the big picture, is taking money from your right pocket, sticking it in your left pocket.
Right.
University System of Georgia, $360 million in cuts.
Slash it all.
Yeah.
Slash it all. Make those children learn online.
Not just make those children learn online. The university systems have been lining their pockets for decades.
Sell your buildings.
Sell your buildings? What students pay for education? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And the coffers that these guys have, that these universities have, is amazing. They've got, the university system is rich. There's plenty of places to cut the budget. Plenty of places.
Well, and there are, the people's allegiances to their universities after graduation is, someone should study it. It's remarkable, but athletics, endowments, all of that are, they're impacted by these types of times, but they're still there. Use some of that money. Call on your community to support some of these extra things that you want.
Well, and some of the other stuff with it is education shouldn't be free. And all this money coming from government makes it free. It makes it, perceivably free. cut things. What do you have on here? One of these. Georgia Southwestern University has proposed closing things like swimming pools and the university golf course. Well, yeah, they're not making money. And I understand that those amenities are used as recruitment tools, as selling points.
I guess. I mean, yes, it is, but
I mean, it's ridiculous that education thinks that it should be insulated against economic downturns.
Public education,
right? It's that somehow they're insulated. Everybody else has got to suffer, but not the universities. Everybody else has got to take a hit, but not teachers. Everybody else has got to take a hit. But I guess poor us, we're going to close the golf course and the pool. It's an institution for higher learning, not a country club.
Right. What is the point of you going there?
And if you want to take that golf course and sell it and let somebody make some money on it. Take that pool and sell it and let somebody sell memberships to it. Golf courses make money. And if students could or even the public can reasonably go play 18 holes and it's reasonably well maintained, and I guarantee you that a private organization will do it better than a public. People will go play golf there. People will pay to play golf. People will join the club to play golf. There are plenty of solutions to put money back in the university's pocket. And like you said, selling the building, sell the amenities, sell that pool.
Yeah, it's just a little dramatic to act like this is just. I mean, there's way more that can be cut too. But they're the university system. I mean, they've got, ask any technical college, ask any university. They have empty buildings. Lease them. If you don't want to sell them, lease them.
Take them all private. You know who doesn't have money problems and who is not affected by this? SCAD. Mm-hmm. Vanderbilt. Emory. And
they all have alternate, like they all have things they do in addition to providing public education, which is the hilarious part. Like they have museums and hospitals and like other things, and they still can make it work.
How SCAD's buying and building buildings all over Savannah. I mean, they can't expand fast enough to handle all the applicants they have.
Yeah, but that's a whole. That we could do a show on that because that's getting out of hand. But
yeah, but they're making a killing and they're not cheap. But you pay for quality, you get what you pay for. These kids coming out of SCAD tend to have jobs. So take them all private. Take them all off the teat.
Well, then what? Well, it's fine with me if we do, but are we getting rid of Hope, or are we going to send Hope to private institutions?
Nope. The government shouldn't be advertising and encouraging gambling either.
Oh, Lord.
The lottery was more fair when the mob ran it.
So where do you want the money to go?
What money?
You want to get rid of the lottery?
Yep. Not a function of government.
Okay,
I mean,
well, we'll have to talk about this next week.
Yeah, how many? Go to one of these gas stations, the little Haji shops, and you see people who really can't afford. I mean, their gambling issues are their own issues, but the government runs ads on TV to encourage people to gamble, and then say, "Please play responsibly." And I'm not above buying a lottery ticket now and then, but my kids, I don't have kids that don't get formula because I go and blow half my paycheck on scratch offs.
Well, why is it the government's job to make sure you don't mismanage your money and buy scratch-offs.
It's not. It's also not their job to sell me scratch-offs. Now, if a private entity wanted, like I said, the
yeah, but you know as well as I do that government wouldn't be able to hand it off to somebody else without having their filthy, dirty hands in it.
Well, they don't hand anything off without having their filthy, dirty hands in it.
Right, that's what I mean. So they'll run it, or they'll make it a racket that only some people can run. And
well, education has gotten so out of control price-wise because of things like Hope, because of things like student loans. So when you take that away, these universities have to adjust. When that parent has to write a check for that education, when the kid has to get a job to pay for school, or has to take a loan that's not government-backed, that price has to come down because they're going to have fewer applications. You're going to find more kids going to trade school, more kids going and getting jobs instead of going to school to get, to spend 6 years to get some sort of liberal arts degree.
I hear you.
So, closing thoughts, Jessica?
Well, I don't really know where to go from there, but
well, it doesn't have to be related.
I guess we'll be back with some talk about the lottery.
I guess so. We'll be back. Stay tuned. Stay tuned for the next 11 legislative days, because we will be tracking them.
Yeah. Sucks.
The budget stuff is going to be very, very interesting. The governor and the legislature don't get along, which I like. I like them kind of being adversarial towards each other, because that's the way it was supposed to be. They weren't supposed to be on one big happy team. They're supposed to keep each other in check.
Preach.
So, for Jessica Szilagyi, for Eric Humby, our editor, I'm Dave Roberts. Have a great week.